What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Joshua Yoder Show. I'm your host, Joshua Yoder, and today I'm going to be discussing some fun, one of my favorite things to do, and that's listen to music. And today, my guest is a local musician. His name is Dusty Sipes. What's up, Dusty?
Hey Josh, thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you so much for coming on. And like I had mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of music, and you being a musician yourself, how long has it now been since you've been a musician?
Oh my, um, great question. I guess probably since I've been 14. I am 43, almost 44 now, so I guess we're hitting 30 years. And I'm not sure if my math is exact there, but that sounds about right. So yeah, my folks got me a drum set when I was, at the end of 13, going on 14, and have pretty much played nonstop since then. Um, Taken a few breaks over the years. I know there was a period, like I think from 2008, I took maybe like 6 or 7 years off or something like that. Had kind of just lost inspiration to play. Now I still listen pretty regularly, and was always out looking for new music and new sounds and things like that. But just the desire to get up in front of people and play had it kind of taken a back burner until um, maybe say 6, 7 years after that. Got re-inspired by a local musician from Lewistown that I used to play with back in the day. His name is Sam Price. He's still playing pretty regularly in Mifflin County, and definitely have to give him the credit for picking up an instrument again and wanting to get in front of people to play.
Now, what was your big introduction into making music?
Um, I've been into music since as far back as I can remember, but honestly, I think um, the first, I guess my first musical memories would be listening to, once back in the day, they used to have these like troll book order forms you would get at school. And basically you could, buy books and posters and VHS tapes back in the 80s. And I remember there was a TV show, it was a Jim Henson show called Fraggle Rock. Obviously not as big as some of his other stuff and maybe not as well remembered, but there was a 45 that came with that. And I remember just playing that endlessly on my brother's sound system back in, it had to be the late 80s, maybe like 88, uh, maybe maybe a hair before that. But that was my first like musical memory. But then after that, there used to be this radio station here in Mount Union, Magic 99. There's a host named Tom Sheeter who is still local, and on Sunday nights, they aired this amazing syndicated program called the Dr. Demento Show. Mm. Uh, the Dr. Demento had been in radio since I think the early 70s, maybe, and literally just had his last show, I think, in October of 2025. But he would play Weird Al Yankovic, Frank Zappa, Tom Lehrer, all these really um, basically like parody comedy music. Then he would also like splice in like George Carlin bits. You'd hear Eddie Murphy. Then you'd hear some really bizarre outsider musicians like Wesley Willis and things like that. And I remember every Sunday night, I think it was 10 o'clock right after this show called Karen's Quiet Storm, I would tune into it. And it was, I think, 2 hours of just these insane, bizarre songs that just spoke to me as a grade school kid. And there were a handful of us that would listen religiously, get on the school bus to go to elementary school, and we would talk about, hey, did you hear this Fish Head song last night, or did you hear Weird Al sing? I'm trying to think what would have been a single at that time, but maybe like Fat or Eat It or something like that, some of the earlier stuff. And it was just this bizarre thing. And at the time, I thought all these musicians were like household names, household celebrities. They were as big as anybody else, like Paul Abdul or Michael Jackson. So I thought these guys were just making crazy money from this music. Now, there were a handful, obviously, like Weird Al, who's still a household name now, but a lot of these other musicians had day jobs, and we had no idea. To us, they were just celebrities making this amazing music that made me laugh and led to great conversations in the morning, riding the school bus. So that was definitely like an early inspiration to think, hey, I want to make these silly songs and make a life, out of that. Sometimes as much as you can conceive of being that when you're, in fifth or sixth grade.
No, that's awesome. And for me, I'm a big fan of Weird Al. I think he's hilarious.
Yeah, Weird Al, Weird Al, he's the greatest. I mean, he really is. The fact that he's still doing it now and touring, and um, it's really amazing too to be able to pass that down to. I have a 7-year-old daughter who is my entire world, and it's amazing to share these songs that I remember listening to at her age, and watching her laugh and react to them, and sharing the music videos. That's a luxury that she has that we didn't have back then, because we had MTV, which was wonderful, but you get maybe a Weird Al song, maybe every few days or something like that. Whereas now, if you want to hear any of his music, it's just like, hey, Harper, check out this, and then I'll show her the music video for Fat, or um, Eat It, or Amish Paradise, and it's really great to kind of relive those songs, because they're just as great now, and younger people still react to him. And he has his legions of fans that have been with him for 40 years now. I think his first record was probably like maybe 1981, 1982, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, and to be fair though, like nowadays people might get offended by some of it. He had no malice when he started doing it, and he always had permission with artists to try to do songs because he just wanted to just make it laugh and have make jokes. That's all.
Yeah, absolute integrity. I honestly think that's one of the reasons he has had uh, such longevity, I suppose, is that, as you said, he would ask the artist ahead of time, and he had just this great rapport. I think everybody kind of respected him. I remember hearing a story of Kurt Cobain uh, saying something along the lines like he didn't realize that his band had made it until Weird Al, made a parody of "Smells Like Teen Spirit." Um, and there's also some other ones too. It's like I believe Weird Al had approached Prince on multiple occasions about doing a parody of his songs, and Prince, being like a famous curmudgeon, very protective of his music, would always tell him no. And under parody law, you don't have to follow those standards. You're able to do those, but Weird Al just never wanted to really step on any toes. So definitely, probably the most respectable person in maybe the history of music, perhaps.
Yeah, but going yeah, absolutely. And going back to you, Dusty, what would you say would be your go-to genre that got you and that really made you want to be into music?
Well, there's definitely two crucial points. Well, three crucial points. The Dr. Demento show initially, just the idea of I didn't know if I wanted to, play guitar or drums or anything at that point, but I just wanted to write these silly songs, make people laugh, be like class clown performer type guy. But for me, 100% was the first time I heard Metallica. That was like the first thing that was like mine. My house, my parents listened to country music, old school, like Porter Wagner, Dolly Parton, Hank Williams, things like that. My brother was, very much into hair metal and stuff like that at the time, and popular music. But Metallica was like, it was something nobody in my household was listening to. It was far too aggressive. But uh, I heard, I can't remember what the exact first song was, but I remember catching after the Black Album came out in '91, Metallica somehow became, like the darlings of MTV. They aired them all the time. Enter Sandman, Wherever My Roam, um, Nothing Else Matters, Sad But True. These
Great song.
videos, or The Unforgiven, were just like in constant rotation. And I, and because of that, they started showing probably their biggest song from the '80s, besides Master of Puppets, was One. So they started showing this old music video that they had released for that, and I remember recording that on a VHS tape and just playing it constantly and constantly, and drove my parents insane. I remember my cousin came over to visit, and I drove her insane with it. And after hearing that and just watching these guys jam out in this warehouse, I mean, that's basically what the music video is. I knew right then, it was like, this is this is me. This is what I want to do. And idolized Lars Ulrich and wanted a drum set. And a couple years later, my folks went out and bought me a legitimate drum set.
Dude, that's awesome. And I'm a big fan of Metallica. And then honestly, I'm a big fan of just any genre, really. I don't I don't really. I mean, obviously, I have my favorites and all that stuff too, but I love all kinds of genres, whether it be blues, country, funk, rock and metal, of course. But then I don't mind like hip hop or pop or anything like that, jazz. I think music's some of the best, greatest gift in the world we get.
It truly is. I think that is always the reminder, at least for me, that there is something bigger than us, and that's the greatest gift that we've been given. That's not love or children. Music is definitely something that unites people. I mean, there's nothing better than like the live element of being in a room with people experiencing music, or even at a party and the music's on. Like it, there's just an element that pulls people together, and it's the greatest. And I agree with you too. There's great stuff in every genre. Uh, Getting up there a little bit in age, other folks that are in my age will say, music was great only in the '90s, or it was only great in the '80s and '70s. But there is so much great stuff that's happening now, and the fact that we can record in our in our basement or in our bedrooms now, it just allows so much music to come out. Obviously the radio is still the radio. You have Taylor Swift, which my daughter loves, and that's fine too. But there's great metal going on right now. There's great hip hop. There's great jazz. I mean, everything. And the fact that we have YouTube, we can find all this amazing stuff that's happening all around us. Like music absolutely is the best.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that because a lot of, I mean, what's crazy is I was born and raised in the '90s, so I definitely love the bands of the '90s, but I also have a lot of respect for things that go back in the '80s, the '70s, '60s. Heck, I even listen to Beethoven.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can trace the roots of everything back. Even stuff that's happening now. Like if you kind of dissect it, and I try not to do that as much as I used to. I find myself more of a casual, I guess, passionate listener just of the music itself, and not trying to break it down to a science and overanalyzing it. But you can trace almost anything that's happening now, like back to a Beatles song, or even before that. I mean, the blues is still so ingrained in music, but classical elements are all through it too. So it's really amazing that the building blocks that have made all these different genres out there. I mean, it's really worth exploring, and to not limit yourself to one particular era, because there's so much great stuff going on in all of it.
Yeah, no, and you kind of brought it up earlier, and I 1000% agree with it. I think, well, one of my favorite things about the internet is that you can find underground music, even if you don't like today's pop music. You can always find something and maybe help someone else, live their dream, and I think that's, the beauty of it, getting to see all these different artists that, may or may not be able to make it to the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I think that I really like, and I know it's kind of commonplace for people to complain about it, but algorithms in technology is one of the best things, because once you kind of find things, type in stuff that you like, it can kind of figure out what you may like, and a lot of times it's pretty darn close, and it's stuff that you never in a million billion years would have discovered elsewhere. Back in the old days, it was it was all word of mouth, obviously, or you saw a really crazy poster of a band, or saw an image in a magazine and went, okay, I'm going to go seek these guys out. Nowadays, you can just kind of pull it right to you without really having to, um, do as much searching as you used to. It's amazing.
Yeah, and they can still be good live or whether they have studio albums.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I say this to people all the time, because I think last year, my fiance Teresa and I think we went to see close to like 60 or 70 shows last year. It was pretty wild. And I swear, music, they have figured out the technology and the audio for live performance, because it sounds better than ever. Even when you go see punk now, for the most part, it's still it sounds a lot better than it used to. Just they've figured a way to dial those cabinets and those PA systems in, and the live experience is truly better than it ever has. Besides all those ridiculous rates and all that other, you know, political stuff that or not political, but like bureaucratic stuff where it has these crazy fees and things like that. Music has almost become a luxury for the live element because it costs so much to do it now, but it's still, to me, very worth the money.
No, absolutely. And plus you get to see bands that you like and maybe, help them get higher and, make a legitimate career out of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, I imagine for people that are touring around nowadays, there are definitely some difficulties. Just like it's always been, but um, not imagine being in my mid 40s and hitting the road to that degree. Now the band I play in with, we play cover music, and we kind of just cover central Pennsylvania and maybe step out of that a little bit, but the idea of going on the road, and that sounds like misery, but I love the fact that people are still doing it. It's great. Like the spirit of music is still alive. It's just not what it used to be, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I also think it'd be kind of cool to, actually be with other people. I mean, I never went, well, the only concert I ever went to was during Creation. That was the only time I ever got to see bands live, and probably the best one I've seen was a group called Red, which they are really good.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them to a degree. A friend of mine was really into them a couple years ago, and I was working with him. And but no, Creation is a really great festival. Uh, I could be wrong, but I believe it is no longer in Pennsylvania or no longer in our area. I mean, it's crazy to think that like the biggest Christian music festival, at least in America, I believe, was Creation, and it was kind of in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And the house I grew up in with was maybe like a 5 minute drive from there. So we would get on our bikes and drive out there. Back in the day, we didn't have tickets almost all the time, but you could still get close enough to hear the music. But there was one time that we did. Um, knowing all the mountainous areas and all the back roads per se, like we snuck into the festival, and it was great. It was definitely one of the earlier musical like festivals I went to, and still an experience I remember now.
Well, yeah, it's unfortunately Creation's no longer in existence, but it's been replaced by the A Gap Festival, I believe it's called. It's still in the same spot. It's free to get in. It's mostly like up and comers, and independent people trying to, make it big. So it's still around. It's trying to rebuild itself.
I did not know that. That's pretty what you say. It's in the same spot, so that'd be like a because it used to be called the Agape Farm or the Agape Farm in Shirleysburg, PA.
Yeah, it's the same spot. That's why it's called A Gap. It's because of the farm. So they call it the A Gap Festival.
Huh. He kind of blew my mind right there. I cannot believe I still live, now I live 15 minutes from it instead of 5 or 10. Uh, and I did not know that was still in existence. I'm going to have to figure out a way to make a trip to that. That sounds amazing, actually.
If I remember, I can send you the link sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Would check that out for sure. That sounds like a good festival I could take Harper to. Teresa and I take her to music all the time. Definitely some limits because we still go to hardcore shows and um, some pretty aggressive music. And Harper, we're a little bit more picky about what we take her to. Um, not like mutually exclusive or anything like that. Because we took Harper to see. Oh my goodness. I think there was the word horizon may have been in the title. Bring Me the Horizon, I think it was.
Oh,
I
believe it or
won,
not.
yeah, I won tickets to it through I think a Facebook post or something, and Harper wanted to go to it, and I thought, okay, I think they're pretty heavy. Let's go check it out, and it was kind of insane, but you know, we were in the stands, not in the pit, and she seemed to enjoy it quite a bit.
No, man, that's awesome, and it's good to have those experiences with your kids.
Yeah, it's that I mean that's one of the greatest experiences that I can share with her. It's like I say, she loves her Taylor Swift, but she can also sing Wesley Willis songs and Metallica songs. She's a big fan of Weezer. Like I say, I'm kind of a '90s teenager, so all of that music is just embedded in my brain. So it is cool to share parts of that because we actually live a mostly like 80s and 90s lifestyle here at our house. Like we have phones and we have tablets, but they're like extremely limited. And we watch old school television. We still go outside. Uh, we just kind of like the simplicity of that era, and we kind of use the music as like the soundtrack of that too, because she really digs that whole spot.
Hey, those are some good decades of music. I can tell you that much. And 60s and 70s are pretty good too.
Yeah, absolutely. That like probably the second phase of what really like threw me into music was definitely 60s music, and that occurred. I think it was, oh my goodness, probably maybe 11th grade in high school. I wasn't really a great student. I just didn't really care. Had a lot of apathy toward learning or following rules, and I guess some things don't really change. I'm probably kind of the same now, but my parents at the time were concerned that maybe what I was listening to was influencing my uh, my delinquency, which was pretty good by I guess today's standards of delinquency. But so my parents like took my Metallica tapes, took my Guns N' Roses tapes because of the language and stuff like that, and uh, my best friend through my early formative years was a guy named Vince, and he was when I got my drum set, he got his guitar, and we played music together for years. But he was really into the Beatles, and so that was someone I could actually listen to in my house with my parents, and it didn't raise any red flags. So that through the Beatles, just became obsessed with like obviously the music is the greatest music ever. I mean, it's legitimately timeless. My daughter knows dozens of their songs. Friends of mine who have children, they know dozens of their songs. They wear their clothes. Like even like the style, like everything was just really appealing. So that for me, I got into the Stones and um, I'm blanking on the big contributors, but basically all your classic like 60s rock bands. I got kind of into all of them for a while and led kind of like a 1990s slash 1960s bohemian lifestyle. It's really cringy to look back at it now, but the music is still phenomenal. Still listen to it a lot, and yeah, I mean it's truly timeless music. You can hear it all through today's music, especially with like the indie guys. They definitely borrowed from all of that. All those guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking of influences, who were some of your influences as when you became more into playing music?
The Metallica would have been the first, and I learned kind of early on that uh, they're a little bit more virtuistic than or virtue, yeah, however you say that word, than I could ever get at guitar or drums. So I remember seeing a picture somewhere of the Sex Pistols album, Nevermind the Bullets, Here's the Sex Pistols, and my parents took me on a trip over to Chambersburg Mall, and I saw it on cassette. It's a bright pink record with like a green splash over it. And I was like, okay, let's just buy this and see what this is about. There's something intriguing about it. And, I bought it, popped it in my Walkman and was driving home, and I went, "Oh, this is something that I can do." Not that they weren't extremely talented, because actually, as far as like technicality, they were definitely one of the higher echelon groups from there. But discovered the Sex Pistols, and then that turned into the Ramones, and got really into 70s punk, and that's probably what I actually listen to the most now is bands from that era, like the Ramones. I can listen to any day of the week. My daughter loves them because they're almost like Beatle type songs. They clearly borrowed from like surf music, rockabilly, and just made it really fast. And the songs were really stripped down. You didn't have to be like a guitar wizard to be able to play them. And that like led into the Misfits because I liked that it was tying like horror movies with punk, and I just loved that scene.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think, obviously, I think metal. I mean, I like all kinds of genres, but I think metal and rock and a lot of the stuff, especially from back in the day, I think there was a lot of misconceptions about them. I think if you actually read the lyrics to a lot of things people were saying, we're talking about, it wasn't nearly as let's just say, evil as many people made it out to be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Black Sabbath is a pretty good example of that. There's songs in there that definitely have almost like Christian messages. If you listen to them, it's not telling you to embrace the evil, but rather, be skeptical of it, be wary of it, that it's, all around us. And yeah, I can see, on a topical level, somebody just hearing those songs and, hearing these dark tones and, um, these evil sounding guitars. But yeah, there was a lot of it that was overhyped for sure. There were some bands that seemed to pop up later that did seem to embrace that, but at the same point, I think some of them really just took it as this was a great publicity stunt because the satanic panic of the 80s was happening, and that was getting a lot of news coverage back in the day. I remember my folks talking about it, teachers talking about the evils of music. I remember I had a music teacher in like maybe third grade or fourth grade or something, uh, and she was talking about the evils of heavy metal, and I still remember how passionate she was in that sentiment. But I think in retrospect, she just was probably getting what was on the news and not really looking into it. Some of these bands were literally just, I think, making a spectacle out of it because it was like, okay, the news is running this. Maybe this will get my name onto the news, and so forth. I think the same thing even carried into the 90s when Marilyn Manson came around, and it was just a lot of it was just for shock value, I think.
Well, and it's even, crazier too. If you listen to the so-called pop or like clean music, if you actually listen to what they say compared to what, like say Black Sabbath or even Marilyn Manson were saying, those things were a lot more cleaner than what the pop music was being played.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There was yeah, pop music has always kind of had these undercurrents, and nowadays it's basically just it's basically pornography now. I guess it has its place in the world and stuff, but yeah, I think pop music has always been a little bit more overt with its uh I guess deviancy. Maybe that's not the right word, but yeah.
Sexuality, maybe.
Sexuality, yeah, absolutely. And me, like I say, being an artist and a musician and stuff, I have no problems with artistic expression whatsoever. But I think maybe that's what people should have been focusing what their kids are listening to. Maybe, perhaps a little bit more than metal back in the day.
Oh yeah, and like you said, I think there's no issue. I have no issue with it if they want to express themselves, especially if there's like a good story and music behind it. But I think a lot of times, like you said, I think people just, I don't know, it gets grotesque, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree.
But going back to you, Dusty, what was it like, when you finally got to play your first show?
Ooh, first show. Good question. We used to play, my friend Vince and I, we had a neighbor that lived between us. Her name was Christina, and we used to set up like in her basement and play, just the two of us. We were just because in this little town that nobody else was playing music at the time, or the few that were they already had their bands and their mates and stuff. So finding a third musician to fill in, playing bass was just impossible. At that time the pickings were so slim. So as far as like a first show, it definitely would have been in Christina's basement or in my yard. We used to set up in Little Charlottesburg and just play like right by the road. And as people went by, I guess those were our early shows, in quotes. Uh, but yeah, I really started, I think, playing live shows in the later '90s. There was a group in Lewistown I got with, a guy named Grant Wilson, Michael Barrich, and Evan, and I can never remember Evan's last name. All great guys. Still talk to them. We actually still have a texting group. We're talking about actually getting together and jamming sometime, maybe doing a little recording. But this was down in Lewistown, and Lewistown compared to Mount Union at that time, it was. I still swear there was a scene that was happening then, because they would rent out or play at like the Brooklyn Fire Hall or like a Kiwanis Club. And when we would play shows, people came to them. Like that's almost unheard of now. But I've seen some pictures recently of like the crowds we had, and like it was a spectacle, and it was a really amazing time. And we were playing covers and playing original music, and just people came out. Like it was just hordes of kids from Lewistown. Like I say, it was like a scene. And whereas if you were to try to do anything up in Mount Union, there wasn't places really to begin with. But I don't think anybody would have bothered coming out. But I still remember those shows very fondly. Just great memories.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I kind of missed out on it because of my age. But I remember being a little kid, and you would always hear stuff that was going on. And of course, where I live, I kind of live out in the middle of nowhere. But just like you said, there was a scene. I remember back in the day, there was this thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know this more, but there was this thing called Battle of the Bands.
Yes, there were. I know there were a handful of those. For some reason, we were never a part of any of those billings, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if maybe because Grant handled all of the like the booking and things like that, and a lot of it was kind of word of mouth and family friends who knew people who ran Qantas and things like that. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure why we never did a battle of the bands. Maybe we did. I'm just forgetting about it now because I would really, I really wish back in time I would have been keeping track of the shows we played because I know I definitely have played hundreds of shows, and man, I wish I had that. I think the only thing from that era that I wish we had was like cell phones to take footage of stuff because there's so few pictures, there's so few videos from back in there because nobody had any of that stuff. Which I guess is probably nice because there's probably some really embarrassing memories that I'd rather forget and have forgotten. Maybe if there was a cell phone, it'd probably be haunting me to this day.
Yeah, no, but going back to what I said before about human connections, I kind of wish there was more stuff like that happening around here. I think it'd be cool to like inspire kids to try to make music or do something like that because I think it'd be important to not only build themselves up but build communities up.
I agree, and I know in Mifflin County there definitely were some efforts that were being made. And being made. There's a really great coffee shop called East End Coffee Company down in Lewistown, run by a guy named Brian Cherry and his wife Lila, and they host some live and it's specifically like original music there. I know on the like they do First Fridays and they have original acts in there. But they've had other things go on as well, and he's been pretty instrumental about trying to, help the next generation of musicians and bring in artists and stuff like that. There was a place on Valley Street in Lewistown. I think it was called the Evolution Arts Center. They had hosted some things there within. I went to a couple of those, and it was cool seeing some of the younger folks like playing and like there was a crowd and it was great. It really kind of felt like the old days, but the only thing was is that it seemed like it was like a one and done. Whereas my memories were we had stuff every weekend, and if we weren't playing, somebody else was playing there. There's a lot of stuff happening all the time, and people were going to it. Um, I think I it's I play in a cover band now, and we I think this year we had 20 shows. We used to do 20 shows, maybe 25 shows a year, something like that. And people, even our age bracket, and especially younger, we just don't go out anymore. And it's just not what it used to be. And not that that's a bad thing, but because people are probably doing other things, but um, back in the 90s into the early 2000s, the typical thing is you'd start at 10 o'clock at night and you'd play till 2 in the morning. That was it. And people were there the entire night. Whereas now a lot of venues have you start at 9 and it'll be like 9 to midnight, or even some places have you playing like 8 to 11. And it's crazy because almost at 11 o'clock, it's like somebody rings like a factory whistle and it's like go home because 11 o'clock people are jumping in their cars and they are leaving. So if you're playing there till midnight, that last hour is really slow because everybody has gone home by then. So I don't know exactly what it is. I have some harebrained theories about why people are different, but yeah, it's definitely like a cultural thing, at least in small town America.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Even though I like the idea of going out and actually see bands because I think it's like I said before, I think it's important to like meet people and get to experience things, even if it's something incredibly small.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, even I remember going out and seeing stuff and not enjoying the band in particular, but it was, still a fun experience to, be sharing that with, with other people who are, having a good time. And yeah, we don't have that so much anymore. And I think cell phones may have some some reasoning for that. But, I think the fact that we all have a camera in our pocket, people don't want to get as wild and crazy in public anymore because they know as soon as they cross a line or a boundary or a social boundary, that cell phone, if not a dozen, are going to be right in your face, and you're going to be immortalized if you. So that's why I think people maybe don't want to dance as much anymore because there's something kind of private about dancing, even when you're doing it in public, where you don't want to, I guess, watch yourself dance the next day, especially if you had a few beers or something, maybe higher. So I don't know if maybe that has influenced things, but it is really hard to get a crowd anymore and to get people to come together. People my age and people younger, they're kind of doing their own thing now.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. And you talk about unfortunate in like different cultures. One of my favorite things about music was also obviously the music was is a key part. But I've always been a big fan of like getting the CDs, like the albums, and I love the artwork they put into it and like the meaning behind it. Like it felt like it was like this big bundle of like art.
Oh, absolutely. And that was one of the things I love so much that vinyl has come back in the last maybe 10 years, maybe it's been less, but like everything is back on vinyl again. And it is like you said, it's the experience, being able to pull apart this big piece of artwork, seeing if there's like posters inside or just reading through the lyrics. Because before, when streaming really kind of started to take off, like that element disappeared entirely. Like I'll admit it myself, I'm kind of hard pressed to think of song titles half the time anymore because you're just like, okay, well, this is part of a playlist or this is number X, Y, and Z. And but when you have like the physical media in front of you, like you're there with it. It's definitely an experience that um streaming doesn't have the same.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And to be honest with you, I think it's just because people like I don't know, I'm big into like poetry. That's one of the things I like to write is poetry. I think a
Hmm.
lot of people kind of miss out on some of that. Not everybody. I think there's still some people that are like very poetic in how they use their words and like get their message across. Like obviously Black Sabbath was one. Another one that I really enjoy. And to be honest with you, I don't think I ever get tired of is the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. And one of the things too is um I one thing I love kind of piggybacking on what you said there is there are so many records that that have the lyric sheet inside and being able a lot of times they would print like the handwritten lyrics that they wrote, and there was something just so great about that instead of it being printed by a typewriter and go, here's the lyrics and so on and so forth. But you would actually see like the scribbled lyrics that I always like to imagine. And it could have just been for publicity or fake, but it almost looked like they were handwritten poems or lyrics that you were reading. And there was definitely like an intimacy to that, which is really cool. You're kind of like you're literally like seeing behind the veil and looking at what came directly from their hand.
Yeah, and I will say this though, even though I wish there were more like live like concerts we can go to or and all that stuff. But I think one thing I will say again about the internet that I think that's been helpful is there's been like these YouTube channels that have people playing music, whether it be covers and or their own original thing. And even though I think that's been helpful too, and one of the things that I've actually been interested in wanting to do was you can create like video games. There's video games that you can play, back in the day, like that's music wise, and it's actually been really fun to play. Like, do you remember Guitar Hero?
Absolutely. Yeah, was a huge fan of that. Played it religiously. I think a lot of other musicians are, I mean, it was probably like a split. There were some musicians who were not thrilled that it was, something that you had to work so hard on to learn to play a real guitar that this watered it down. But I always looked at it, it was like, okay, younger kids are hearing all these old songs that they would not have been hearing otherwise. You hear like the Guitar Gods edition, they had a Beatles edition, I think of Rock Band or Guitar Hero, one of the two. So I always looked at it as this is putting these great songs into people's ears and that wouldn't have heard it normally, and that might inspire them to actually want to learn to play a real guitar. So I always looked at that as an amazing experience personally.
Yeah, and in a game currently that I always like the music beat 'em up games too that they had. And I also one particular game that I never got a chance to play, but I would really love to play it, and I wish it got more traction was a game called Rock God Tycoon.
I will. You have to send me a link to that because I definitely won't remember that title, but that's a great title though.
Yeah, it's on Steam. It's basically what it is like you get to create a band and you got to make these different choices, and you can actually like write your own lyrics, and you can also determine the style of music you play. I mean, there's pre-recorded like riffs and all that stuff and drum beats that you can just like paste together, but it's still in a way your own original thing. Or you
Yeah.
can just like let everything be automatic, but you get to build a band from from your garage, go to short gigs, and try to make it big by the end of the game.
Right. That's pretty
It's like
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
I'll have to look into that. Definitely send me a link to that. That actually sounds really amazing.
no, it is. And there was actually a couple people, they didn't really fully play it, but there was a couple of videos of people playing it on YouTube, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. That'd be because me, I like to write, and uh, obviously it would be cool to be a musician, but I don't think I'd be have the ability to do so. But using that'd be kind of fun and maybe create something cool for people to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually reminds me of a conversation I had. I think it was yesterday. If it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before that. I ran to a local musician. I won't say any names because I know this is a very polarizing topic, but they told me that they were using like AI. They were writing the lyrics, but they were putting it into an AI program to help like write the songs, and then basically taking the song and then learning it on the real instruments and whatnot. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet.
Well,
Um,
honestly, as a writer, I feel that AI is okay if it like helps you, but you still gotta write it. But to like make AI completely like write everything for you and then you put your name on it, I have a problem with that.
yeah, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and I guess I can probably answer my own question or my own indecisiveness about that. But I know that there was the last Beatles song that came out just a year or two ago. Now and Then, I think it was called. I know that they did actually use some AI to like not write the song in any capacity, but use the technology in there to pull some things out of like old recordings or something. So if it's good enough for the Beatles, I guess it's good enough for me.
Well, and I also too, I think it kind of though it's kind of like a really thin line to be walking because there's people that are out there that do this and it's like it's all 100% AI. So it's like I still think you got to have like some ability or some passion to actually, put in the effort and do it. You can't just be totally relying on AI.
Yeah, yeah, the human element is definitely important. But yeah, I mean, as long as I think we're using it as like a creative tool rather than like reliancy, then I don't see anything wrong with it really. Now that I'm saying the words out loud, I think it's one of those conversations that I haven't had, but now that we're discussing it, it's becoming more clear in my head. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. I 1000% agree. Like, cause like there was our guy, I guess I found out through my mentor Brian Carson, and I hope I got this story right. But he said there was a guy that was up for like some kind of award, and then they found out it was everything he wrote was 100% AI. It wasn't him.
Yeah, that's that's frustrating.
Yeah, that's really frustrating. But it was also what kind of scares me was I'm a big Frank. My one of my influences as a writer is Frank Miller, and
Oh yeah.
he sent me he read me a 500 word story. He he said, "Does that sound like Frank Miller?" And I said, "Yeah. Why? What about it?" And he goes, "That's 100% AI."
Mm,
Someone took like something. He says, "Hey, can you write me like a Frank Miller, in like some kind of film noir in the style of Frank Miller?" And like he's reading it, and I'm listening to it. I'm like, I thought it was Frank Miller himself who wrote it, but it wasn't. It was just all AI.
yeah, that's a little frightening.
Yeah, but do you think that could hurt too? Like people just thinking like, oh well, the machine can do it, and they think, oh well, it's real, but it's not really a real human emotion. Do you think that could be a problem?
Um, yeah, as a musician and artist, I think it could because, to my knowledge, there is music, and I think the streaming services are the ones who are really kind of trying to figure this whole thing out. But there was, I think, a country song that maybe went number one or was charting really, really high, and it was a completely AI generated band. Like there is nothing besides, you know, the machine making the music, which I mean, that's kind of frightening, I suppose. But that's why I think the live element is really like the key with moving forward. If somehow people can kind of get back into that experience more, because I mean, you can obviously we have hologram technology and stuff like that, but um, I can't imagine that it's going to be really easy to replace like the live element of like a hardcore show or a metal show or watching performers and things like that. So it might have to be like a restructuring of what we know as music, and it might have to focus more on those types of things moving forward, which is cool with me because the live experience is the greatest.
No, I agree with that. And speaking of live performances, I definitely want to get your take on this because we both like Black Sabbath. And one of my favorite musical moments recently was the final show Black Sabbath did, and Ozzy Osbourne unfortunately is no longer with us. God rest his soul. He his final song that he sang was "Mama, I'm Coming Home," and then he passed away after that concert. That moment to me was one of the. I mean, it's a shame that he's no longer with us, but it was like a cool moment that he went out like that. It was like a beautiful, like poetic moment.
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, you can't really have a better way to end a legacy than that. I mean, I think moments like that happen pretty rarely, and um, that's why I think we appreciate those things so much when they happen because they just we don't have enough of those. I suppose we get enough. Well, we get a couple here and there, but yeah, that was really an amazing end to you know probably the greatest you know career in metal history.
Oh, without question. And it's crazy to think that a lot of these people like Ronnie James Dio, Peter Steele from Typo Negative, just to name a few, there's a lot of them are they're slowly going away, man, and it's a shame. Appreciate them
Yeah,
while we had them.
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you I always tell people like if you appreciate an artist in any way capacity and they're doing it live, experience it because you don't know when that train's reaching its destination.
No, amen to that. And I guess my final question is, with you, Dusty, I want to talk about is, do you have any future projects coming up that you like to discuss?
Well, at the moment, the best way to find out where I'm playing, I play with a band called Downfall here in central Pennsylvania. We're a cover band. We do 70, well, yeah, 70s, but it's mostly like 90s, early 2000s. And we play modern rock too. We play dance music. I mean, to me, that's where I find my happiness now is playing music that people know, that they can dance to, sing along to, and just kind of have a good night out. As far as other projects, always kind of working on stuff. There's a guy, I played with a group, a guy named Ryan Mary and Jeff Hackenberg. It's called Wisto. Lewistown boys. Ryan recently relocated to Pittsburgh, but we are planning to put out some more stuff, more original music. And the fact that we can do everything remotely now makes that so great. Again, we do like rockabilly, surf, um, kind of classic rock stuff. No shows with that because we just don't really have the time, but that can be found on YouTube eventually. I mean, it's on all the streaming services too. It's Wisto. Kind of a cool piece of folklore with that is there used to be um, Wisto is like the middle of Lewistown, Lewisto town. And there was a guy, I think in the 30s, who made like this home elixir, or it was like to make you stronger, more powerful, and he called it Wisto. And we found this really great advertisement from back in the day, and we just lifted it from there. And that band, like I said, that's the stuff I really enjoy. Recording the original music, but finding a place to play original music is pretty much impossible unless you're kind of traveling out of town, for a bit for that. As far as other projects, nothing really much at the moment. I'd like to get like a dad rock band who gets together like I don't know, once a month or once every few months to just play some, be like, hey, today we're going to play a bunch of Misfits songs, and next time we're going to play a bunch of Sabbath songs. And it's just us to kind of get together, hang out, talk about music, and play stuff. So if there are any dads in the or you don't have to be a dad, but maybe a middle-aged guy in central Pennsylvania and you're looking to just come rock out, I'm going to be hosting that at my house. We have a big practice space here, and I'm pretty excited about that, just for the fun factor.
No, absolutely. And honestly, it's again, music's just it's such a beautiful thing, and it's so cool to hear stories like this, and like hopefully be able to see more and more people come together and play some great music.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that guitar sales and have been up in recent years, so I'm hoping that's a sign that it's not like retired dentist buying a bunch of guitars, and I'm hoping that it's younger kids who are wanting to, learn something new.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dusty, for coming on to my show today.
No, I greatly appreciate you, Josh.
Yeah, we've been planning this for a long time, and we finally got it.
Yep, yeah, I'm excited. We finally our paths finally crossed in the right time. Life is really, really busy on my end, and I'm sure you are too. But I appreciate you reaching out and chatting for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to do this again sometime.
Anytime, brother.
And God bless you, man. I hope you're doing well. And to all of you that are watching, I love you all, and God bless. Be safe, everybody.